Hi, everyone. My name is Phil Blancato. I am Chief Market Strategist for Osaic, CEO of Vladimir Dauman Asset Management. Welcome to another weekly market impact. Well, it's Snowmageddon. Oh my gosh, it's all we talk about. It's so funny how we get so worked up about snow events. It really is quite incredible how badly the media just cracks me up. It's a never-ending barrage of stuff. So, Snowstorm Fern affected 200 million people. My daughters down in Athens, Georgia, are freezing their butt off because it's quite cold down there. It's a lot colder than it normally is. And for sure, Luca went out and unfortunately slipped a little bit, but she's fine. I cleaned my front of my house where we've got about, I'd say 14, 15 inches of snow. I went out 4 times and have done tremendous amount of work. But luckily enough, we are good to go. So this week, I was supposed to have a special guest to speak about cryptocurrencies, but and actually energy and where energy is going to supply crypto and energy for markets. But unfortunately, with the weather, the person lives in Nashville, Tennessee, so they'll hopefully join me next week. Big thing about this weekend, you're going to look at an incredible power surge where kilowatt per hour was normally $200 for kilowatt per hour, going up to 1,800 in 13 Eastern Seaboard states. And partly it's data centers, partly it's demand, partly it's cold weather. This energy problem isn't going away. And as an aside, I think it's something we should all keep a close eye on, that I think energy is going to become one of the, never-ending conversations around where it comes from, affordability, how much can be built. I happened to spend some time last week at a conference with a firm called Capital Group, which is American funds. And one of the speakers there, which I hope to have on a podcast, talked about building modular nuclear reactors. And that nuclear is absolutely the future. It's not fission because, I'm sorry, it's not fusion because it's still too far away and too expensive to build. That uranium, they've now have developed ways to get uranium out of the ground that's in everything, even in salt water. So it's no longer an issue with getting the uranium. And modular reactors are safe, fast, and efficient. Who knows? I know we need a solution. And I think this weekend storm proves that. Sports weekend, I'm a bit of a Rams fan. As a kid, I grew up Giants and Rams, soft spot for the Jets. But unfortunately, my beloved Rams blew up last night. They should have scored that touchdown on that last drive. But if you're a Pats fan or you're a Seattle Seahawks fan, good for you. Enjoy the Super Bowl. I really don't want New England to win again. Forgive me for all my New England fans out there. I can't take another New England Super Bowl. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who feel the same way. And Seattle's a good team, so I love the story there about the quarterback and the team. I think it's a good story, so I'm all in on that. But anyway, that's irrelevant. Hopefully you stayed warm this weekend. Hopefully you did something fun, and hopefully you enjoyed the snow and that it's been a real winter. It has been a real winter, and I think that's the fact of it. I thought last week's Davos event was a fascinating one. That the Davos event last week, excuse me, was whether it was the Greenland conversation, which started off as a big issue and then fizzled out, maybe. Scott Besson, who I really like, made some odd comment about how, this is our land to take and Denmark is irrelevant in all this. I thought that was very strange of him. But beyond that, there's the potential China-Canada trade deal, which violates the WTO, which our trade deal with them. So that was a major issue. There's Syria doing it, taking over land and capturing and indoctrinating people into their military, even more bizarre. And then go into all the other things that came out of Davos, like President Trump suing J.P. Morgan, the terrible situation in Minneapolis. I'm all for the idea of legal immigration. It's a critical thing for us. You have to have legal immigration. But at the same token, watching people, all these riots in the street, people losing their lives, I love the passion for people who want to protest, especially when it's that cold out. There's got to be a better way than this. God, it seems terrible. How do we get in the situation? It's just absolutely terrible. But all that aside, I hope you had a wonderful weekend. What's important about the headlines is never let the headlines get in the way of a story. I think you got to be careful about letting headlines dominate your point of view. I talked about this last week a little bit. I won't go into it a lot. But headlines like last week are scary, whether it's Syria or Greenland or the Canada trade deal or this idea that buy anything but America, this anti-American rhetoric that's out there. And I guess the president is using a kind of a bully pulpit to do what he thinks is best. And we're on the precipice of another government shutdown. But oddly enough, the market's holding up. Why? Earnings. This week's a very important week. This week, we're going to get a full slate of earnings. And the reason why that's so important is because when we saw what's coming out this week, you're going to get a lot of companies that are credit card companies, airline companies, cruise lines. Some of the big Magnificent Seven companies are going to come in this week. And they're going to be a bellwether on how the U.S. consumer is, whether or not the U.S. consumer is really holding up from the idea of can the U.S. consumer continue to be sort of this stalwart out there? And the reason why I say that is because you have to ask yourself, in a world where, we really are trying to understand whether or not we're having success enough in wages, lower taxes, this idea of building a better America through the new tax code. Will all this stuff really have a profound impact on the U.S. consumer? And so far, it has. In fact, I read a piece over the weekend, which I thought was really quite interesting, about where the U.S. consumer is. And why that's so important is when you think about the strength of the U.S. consumer, it's as the consumer goes, the U.S. economy goes. I'm going to sum it up this way. When you look at the strength of the U.S. economy right now, there's a tremendous amount of what we call CapEx boom, and that is spending by corporations to add on additional facilities. Why? And I've talked about this a lot with you in the big, beautiful bill, was this ability to immediately deduct any revenue spent, any cost spent on building something. So if you own plant number one and you build plant number two, all the money spent on plant number two is deductible, and you can and basically lower your corporate tax. It's very powerful. It means there's some degree the beginnings of an American Renaissance, whether it's data centers that are being built, liquefied natural gas plants, or everything in between, car factories down to aluminum smelters. The second one is that we're seeing the job market hang in there. We're seeing daily postings actually go up again, number of jobs that are open increase again. We're seeing the labor market soften a bit, a kind of a no hire, no fire world, but nothing terrible. And then you see that income taxes are going down. They went down starting in January. And the withholding for taxes is really quite impressive that what you have now is lower Social Security, lower taxes on tips, lower wages, more child care credits, and on, salt taxes. This creates a spending boom for the consumer, or more spending. You look at gasoline prices. I paid $2.52 a gallon over the weekend. Really impressive. Weekly attendance at Broadway shows, believe it or not, higher levels than normal in January. January's been a cold month. And even same store sales. We saw retail sales come in good. We look at this thing called Redbook. And Redbook is a gauge for consumer spending. And that also suggested that at the end of the day, the consumer is still quite strong. So what does it mean? It means you put all this together, and in spite of the headlines, the U.S. consumer is hanging in there. We've got a stock market that I think has gone a long way, a boom over the last 3 years. Just think when the 3-year cumulative average return of the S&P 500 is 80%. Incredible. The 3-year cumulative return for the NASDAQ is 111. Can that continue? Well, right now, when you look at earnings, how much companies make, we need that continued earnings growth to get the U.S. economy where it needs to be and continue to drive the stock market higher. And let's be honest, 51% of earnings growth is coming from tech companies because of all the boom in AI. But financials at 13% expected to grow, consumer services 9%, industrials 8%, consumer discretionary 6%, and the rest a little lower from there. My point is, with decent earnings growth, the U.S. market should hold on, which goes back to my normal narrative of, simply put, the U.S. market is hanging in there well enough. The U.S. economy is hanging in there pretty well. Earnings are hanging in there good enough. The consumer's hanging in there good enough. This week we'll get some data. But certainly, all things considered, despite of those headlines and everything you're hearing, and maybe someday they have an impact, but not today. The market cares about profits, which are up around 13%, and it cares about earnings, which are both doing quite well. Heck, we may have fourth quarter GDP come in at 4.4%. Oh my gosh, that's a gigantic number. Now, there's things that could affect that. So let's not let one quarter, kind of change the way we look at things. But you have to be excited about those kind of numbers. They really are impressive. And what does it mean? For the year, we're already up 1% on the S&P 500, even though we lost 0.34 last week. 1% times 12, or 12% year. I think this becomes an average year for stocks, 8 to 10%. The Dow is the winner here because a lot of traditional industrial companies doing quite well, up 2.23. What's winning? Value versus growth. Value up 3.92, growth only up negative 1.04. And for the week, they were all negative. Oddly enough, small caps, which have been really kind of interesting, up 7.58 on the year. Now flat, down a little bit last week. International continued to do well, 3.6% on the year. Emerging markets, 7% on the year. Both were kind of flat on the week last week. Emerging markets, depending on the sector, did okay. When you look at the bond market, flat on the year, call it basically flat, but still getting a whopping 4.5% yield. Why all this matters is because so far things are normal. A normal year with some normal volatility, things are coming and going. Not a big deal, nothing to be panicked about. We did get some data last week, which I thought was interesting. Not only do we have a big week for earnings this week, but we also have the PCE. PCE to me is a terribly important number. When I look at PCE, it's what the Fed cares about. The Fed is meeting this week. I don't think they're going to cut rates. The data suggests they should not. PCE came in fine. The November PCE inflation was in line with expectations at 0.2%. So not a big deal. I'm sorry, December PCE. When you look at core PCE, what they care most about, increased by 0.2. So year over year, core PCE at 2.8%. Not a bad number, really nothing to worry about. Headline PCE, 2.8%. Not down at the Fed's target of 2%, but certainly, not a bad number, trading sideways. So should the Fed cut trade here? I don't think so. I think they can buy themselves another quarter or two, especially in the middle of another headline. Trump suing the federal governor over the buildings, and the Lisa Cook issue, one of the governors that made a mistake on her application or lied, whatever you want to call it. All these things sum up to the same kind of scenario, which is headlines don't matter. And factually, the data, whether it's PCE inflation data, which measures how much we spend every week, is really quite good. Q3 productivity was really quite strong. Q4 productivity quite strong. GDP hanging in there. My point is, for all the concern about what's happening out there, it's really not that bad. And what does it mean for markets? It means there's other markets you can invest in which have the opportunity to have a significantly stronger upside. So while this week we went on some important earnings data, I do think you're looking at a scenario where last week, even though markets sold off a bit, really very little, basically flat. Some of the headlines probably created some instability. We saw some issues with the banks doing good right now, and maybe some concerns a little bit later on down the road. But nothing really terribly important. This week's a short podcast. I'd call it a fairly benign week in spite of Davos, other than headlines, which have gotten in the way of some things. So I sum up the week by this week will be important with earnings data. I go back to where you want to still be invested in diversified international stocks, small cap stocks, and mid cap stocks are beating large cap growth. I expect greater earnings growth, maybe 25 to 50% in the mid and small space, solid 10 to 12% overseas, 8 to 10% in the United States. What's it mean? Be diversified. Add fixed income to your portfolio. Take advantage of what the market's giving you. Just that simple. It's not any harder than that. I'd love to tell you it is. It really isn't any harder than that. Put it all together. I don't think, I mean, there's not a lot to worry about. By the way, you can see Whiskey's cage in the background. Whiskey's getting bigger. She's 4 months old, that little thing. She's just full of energy. Oh my gosh. Just seen her outside playing in the snow. I just realized my video's on. Of course, it should be on. Anyway, I wish I had fun, exciting stuff to talk to you about this week. I did read one piece that I thought was really pretty cool. First off, I attended a conference last week. I'll give a quick highlight on. There's a new technology to analyze our blood, where you'll take a small amount of blood, you run it through a processor, and eventually they think they can do this on your phone, where the blood test will give you, based on your DNA makeup, your current blood test, it'll tell you what diseases you're susceptible to, what cancers you're susceptible to, what you can do as a preventative now, and more importantly, if you do get one of those diseases, which medicines will be best for you. Rather than the smorgasbord of throwing everything at you, can you imagine when you have the ability to test yourself and know exactly what's going to make you better? And I thought I was fascinated by that. Then I got a chance to learn, I said, about nuclear power. And then finally, a little bit about what's happening with AI and where it goes from here. And the idea of robots having a fundamental major part of our lives where maybe in 20 years, if not sooner, there'll be more robots on the planet than there will be humans. What? Now, that's a kind of a goofy phrase. Why? Because there's already a lot of robots around. The vacuum cleaner in your house. So let's be. I don't know. They mean walking around robots, but this is coming, everybody. I mean, I was just in California, and this little robot cart went running down the street, full of food, jumped over a curb, delivered it to somebody's house. Nobody driving it. There's a little cart going down the road. You go to the airports. Yeah, I was in a big corporate building. The robots cleaning the ceramic floor. Used to be a guy doing that or a girl doing that. No more. That's a robot. Go to the airport. You'll see them walking around in the lounges cleaning up plates. So it's coming fast and furious. The one thing I did notice is that this is a relatively new thing, and this was part of the event, is that AI is being infused in all the gadgets we own, whether it's your phone or Alexa or your computer. You're going to end up having incredible, we already have it. Gemini, especially Google, has very strong voice recognition. So when you're dictating to it, it's turning it into regular speak, it's fixing up your sentences and giving you a quick and easy response. I'm a little worried about that. Does it mean we ask? It's kind of like my kids who don't know directions. I mean, they're okay at it, but I can get just about anywhere without looking at a map, especially in the East Coast. I know the roads well enough, especially in the New Jersey area. I don't need a map. I mean, I might look at it now to see traffic, but my kids, because they're so used to using GPS, they literally just do their thing. They just, get in the car, hit where they're going, and follow it. Now, I'd argue it makes you more efficient, but also makes you dumb because you don't know basic roads. What if the satellites go out? What if the power's down? So my point is, and this article alluded to it, sure it makes us more organized. Sure it gives us faster answers. Probably makes us more efficient. But do we lose that cognitive ability to think for ourselves? That scares me because I see it all the time with some of the young kids I work with. Sometimes they get too reliant on technology to figure things out. That worries me. Listen, I'm a terrible typist. I'm good at it. So I'm the ability to speak to it and I do it all. I've been doing it for a while. Could let it dictate to me and then I go back and fix it up. But I do worry about when all the gadgets over the next 12 months are much more about voice recognition than typing and very good at it. Where does it lead us? Hmm. Fascinating stuff. Fascinating. So, in other words, solid week last week. We were flat for the week. So far, PCE, not an issue. The Fed, I don't think, cuts this week. Good week of earnings to come. Be diversified in your portfolio. Pay attention to some of the data that's out there because I think, the earnings out of this week is going to be very relevant. And most importantly, get out and make a snow angel. I was jumping around in my boots and having fun with the dogs. Actually, kind of funny. I had to cut a path with the snowblower in my grass because the dogs don't like to. Oh, it's snowing. It's snowing right now. Well, you can't see my window, but it's snowing now, snowing pretty good. The dogs don't like to go out to do their business on top of the snow. Welcome to my world. It's all good. I'm on my way to Dallas today to go visit my buddy Chuck Green down there and have some fun. My shout out of the week, kind of a different one this week. I've got a dear friend. He's an Armenian immigrant. I'll just leave his name out there as Vlad. And he runs a business called Kiva Homes. And he's one of these people that I wish you could all meet. And the reason why is because when you think about people who fundamentally, do the right thing, think about doing the right thing, help everybody whenever they can, but most importantly, work their butt off. Vlad came to the United States with nothing. He famously told me a story once about he used to run around without shoes on, cleaning up the leaves behind a diner to hope that they would give him a job someday throwing out the garbage. And that's exactly what happened. Over time, he would go into school in the United States, came here as a young teen, learned English just by working at the diner, got his high school degree, and then slowly got into construction. And today he's a general contractor. He's done lots of work for me. He's rebuilding a kitchen at a house that I own, I inherited from my father. Guy does incredible work, very fast, but that's not the point of this. The point of this is that immigrant dream is not dead. The American dream is not dead. If you want to work hard and take advantage of the opportunity, whatever it might be, cleaning snow, cutting grass, or becoming a contractor, it's still there. And Vlad is the epitome of it. Now, a great family man with two beautiful kids and a wonderful wife. He smokes. It pisses me off. Excuse me. That gets me angry because I don't know if that's a bad word anymore, but anyway, it gets me angry. I don't want him to smoke. It's a good friend of mine. But great family, good people, works his tail off, and in the end, is an American success story. So my shout out of the week goes to that immigrant person. And I will still say people also need to come here legally. We need to make sure there's a line so no one jumps the line. Today, we've got millions of people here who are illegally. I think you got to give them amnesty. Don't hate me for this. Give it a 10, 12-year period where you got to keep your nose clean and no more illegal immigrants. Those who are here and play by the rules and pay their taxes, let them stay. We need their help. We need immigrants. Forget the politics for a minute, because by the way, that's economics. That's not my heart talking. That's economics. You need these people in the American economy. Otherwise, the city of LA would shut down. As an example. My point is, I think Vlad is emblematic of an American success story. Here's why. Not only did he contributed to the American economy, he adds to New Jersey economics. He pays his taxes. Two kids, one's in college, one's going to college, the other one's right behind it. Contributed to the society, builds houses, fixes home, has his own. So in other words, that immigrant, emblematic by Vlad, is an economic success story for New Jersey and an American dream story for him and his family. That's why immigration is so important at a time when Chinese demographics are terrible. They're falling apart. They don't have enough babies. Japan, Europe, so on. You're going to have robots do the average daily job because they don't have people, but you still need the people and the productivity to succeed. And I don't know that that changes until we have robots that are better than humans, and that's still not here. So I guess my point is my hat's off to my buddy Vlad, but emblematic of how immigration and economics are permanently tied together. And Vlad is the tip of the spear. My buddy Vlad, my shout out to him this week. And all the other immigrants, like my mom and dad, who came here and made this a great country. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you all real soon.